Hello everyone, I'm Mary Dandino, your host for this presentation brought to you by New Bedford Cable Network and the City of New Bedford. We all know that the global pandemic has changed the way many things are done, and Christmas is no exception. So this year we decided to highlight some of the ways the city has created a festive atmosphere just when we need it most. Get your hot chocolate, a warm blanket, and join us as we take a tour of the Rotch Jones Duff House and Garden Museum, which is all decked out for Christmas. We'll check out the downtown tree lighting in Clasky Common Park, Festival of Lights. We'll hear from the UMass Dartmouth String Ensemble, look at some ambitious lighting displays from residences around the city, and we'll end with a special guest reading the timeless classic, "Twas the Night Before Christmas." Because like the song says, we need a little Christmas right this very minute.
We may be in the midst of a pandemic. Things may be different and for everybody in so many respects, but there are certain things that endure. And the city's been, and one of them's what we're doing right here. For many, many years, for decades, the city's come together at this time of year to light the Christmas tree, which kicks off for the city the holiday season, gets us into the stores, gets us into the restaurants, all of which you can still do, just as a reminder, and we encourage that. But it's the constancy, it's the tradition of doing this that this year I think is more important than ever. There's so much to be grateful for despite the pandemic, and over the course of the last 9 months, we've come together as families and as a city in ways that we probably had never anticipated. But if there's any big silver lining or a legacy of the pandemic that will be good, it will be the fact that maybe we just appreciate what we have a little bit more. Maybe we're just a little bit closer to one another, having gone through all this together. And so we take stock of all that at this time of year. Of course, we still want everybody to remain safe, to take all the necessary social distancing and mask wearing and other precautions along the way. We still want you to shop in New Bedford with those precautions in place. But most of all, we really want all of you to have a safe holiday season, a welcoming holiday season, a holiday season that, at least for a moment, will feel like it always does. So I want to thank before I turn this over to Council President Joe Lopes, who's going to say a few words on behalf of the council. I just wanted to say thanks to a few folks here who helped put this together, from the city DPI, as well as Brooke from the tourism office did a great job in assembling all this. This tree, by the way, wasn't donated this year. It actually came from city-owned land, and which is great because we usually don't pay for it, but it's pretty cool that the city actually has something like this in stock. And I just want to thank Cable, of course, and all of you for pitching in to make it just so. This almost blew down a couple of days ago. DPI saved it, and so it's with their help and emergency management as well. All these guys have been doing such great work throughout the pandemic. Brian Nobriga, who wears many hats, has been extremely busy the last 9 months. Has found time to do this as well. So I just want to thank all of you guys for pitching in, pitching in and going a little bit extra to make it seem like Christmas this year. And of course, I want to thank Santa for making his special appearance today. Santa is doing something a little more metro, I'd say, with lack of a better word, like looking good. Santa, of course, And again, as I always remind the kids in attendance, he is monitoring which ones of you are nice and which are naughty. All the adults fall, of course, into the naughty category, but you kids still have a shot at a good Christmas. Just kidding, you parents out there. All right, so I'm gonna finish up and turn this over to my friend City Council President Joe Lopes, and then we'll get to lighting the tree.
Good evening, everyone. Before I say any words, I'm going to go through the list of councilors that are here. We have Councilor of Ward 5, Scott Lima. Behind me, we have Councilor at Large and First Vice President Brian K. Gomes, Councilor at Large Naomi Carney, Councilor at Large Ian Abreu, Councilor of Ward 3 Hugh Dunn, Councilor of Ward 2 Maria Jester, and Councilor of Ward 4 Derek Baptiste, and Councilor of Ward 1 Brad Markey. From all of us to all of you, we want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. You know, we were all talking about how it feels a little different this year, but the one thing we can all agree on is that the Christmas spirit is still alive. It's about being with your family, it's about being with your friends, it's about celebrating the community that we all call home. We might not have the stage and a couple hundred people, but we still have a community that we all care about. We all love each other, and we're all working collectively together for the entire community. As the mayor stated, the tree didn't get here without a task of city employees and a team working together. The team is always with you. Even though the season's a little different, we're all wishing you a very Merry Christmas, a happy holidays, Feliz Navidad from my family to yours and from the entire City Council family and everyone, even the youngest one. We have Councilor Elijah Ian Abreu's daughter here celebrating the holiday spirit. As long as we all have that same twinkle in her eye, the Christmas spirit can't be diminished by COVID. Merry Christmas and God bless.
All right, thank you, Joe. I'm going to just ask Santa to come up with a few guiding remarks to all you kids who want to remain on that nice list. Santa, the big man is in the house. Come on.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. You are on the good list. Oh, ho, ho. Want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and remember, when you are out looking for gifts, when you are out looking for things to do, you never need go more than 10 miles from where you are right now. There's wonderful things in New Bedford, wonderful opportunities, wonderful holiday for all of us. So please stay safe and please enjoy the holidays. Thank you so much. Ho, 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 ho.
All right, everybody. Hey, Santa, weren't you telling me that someone ends up on the naughty list if they don't wear a mask? No, it's all right. All right, put that mask on, kids. All right, just kidding, Santa. Well, listen.
You just went to the naughty list. Thank you.
All right, everybody. So this is the big moment. We got our countdown to start. And then after we light the tree, we're going to hear from members of the New Bedford Symphony Orchestra. Thanks, guys, for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. Let's hear it for them, the quartet that we have tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And, you know, you kids, you know that I usually start off the countdown at around 500, right? 500, is that about right? No. Less? How about 10? 10 good? 10? Start at 10. All right, everybody, you ready? City Council? Ready. All right. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey!
Welcome to the Rotch Jones Duff House and Garden Museum. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about this 1834 mansion on 396 County Street. Come on in. We're only here as a museum because in 1834, a very wealthy gentleman named William Roach Jr. Built this house. 1834 was the date that he built this house up on County Street. And at the time, his wife Lydia was looking to kind of leave the smoggy waterfront area that they were living on currently, which was closer to the water, but kind of smellier, dirtier. Once they moved up to 396 County Street, Mr. Roach was actually in his 70s, but he was also quite wealthy by then off of his whaling industry. He was really known as the Rockefeller of whaling, if that makes more sense to you. This was how he made his fortune, and this mansion is part of what he did with his fortune. We know that Mr. Jones, Edward Coffin Jones, bought the house directly from William Roach, and he also was involved in whaling. So by 1851, whaling is still an industry, and Edward Coffin Jones is an agent. Now, agents were the ones that set up voyages. So he would have hired the captain, he would have taken care of the provisions for the ship. He was also a very wealthy individual. By the time he moved to this house in 1851, it was because his family was expanding, he had 3 children, and he was expecting more. So at 1851, Edward Jones moves to this house with his second wife, who unfortunately passes away, and he takes a third wife, and they live in this house for some time. Now, the Duff family is the last family to live in this house. By then we're talking it's about 1935, and Mark and Beatrice Duff move in. Mark is in his 40s, and his intention with buying this house is that it's about 100 years since Mr. Roach built it, and it's really a symbol of grandeur, of the grandeur of whaling, the golden age of whaling, and the grandeur of that era. So Mark Duff moves in. He's also a huge fan of gardens, and he finds the property to be beautiful and also this kind of symbolic of grandeur. And they live in the house until 1980. So by the time Mark Duff has passed away and Beatrice Duff is still here in the house, she's aging, and she leaves the house to live in a care facility. She's looking to sell the house. At that time, in 1980, it could have been purchased by a developer, and rumor has it that our gardens would have been a parking lot. That's what we say, it would have been a parking lot were it not for local citizens and this still present group called WHALE, the Waterfront Historic Area League, who purchased the house, saved it from development, and kept it in its original 1-acre format that you'll see today. 1 acre, gardens, and the original mansion, preserved by WHALE thanks to local citizens, and we became a museum and incorporated in 1985. So we're in the parlors of the Rotch Jones Duff Mansion right now, where somebody like Lucy Clark, the housekeeper during the Jones family residency, might have greeted you and welcomed you as a guest to the house. Parlors are where you received guests. Now, we have decorations up for the holidays, and if you were to visit in the month of December here at the house, you would probably see decorations like this. They change every year, so you have to come every year. But during the residencies of the Roach, Jones, and Duff families, they didn't decorate quite the way you see it decorated at the time. So what we'll talk about is what they did do for family celebrations and special occasions. At Christmas, the Jones family were known to have a party in 1871, we know this from diaries, that they invited guests to bring a gift of no more than $1 value. Now, if you do equivalencies, that's about $26 today. So guests were invited to bring this gift, and then they were hung on a tree next to a little poem for the recipient. So each poem or saying was meant for that person. Trees at the time were much smaller. Decorations on those trees might have been nuts, fruit. In the 1870s, you could buy commercial ornaments, but even those were not made the way they are today. They were probably glass or tin, maybe wax. So that might have been what the Jones family tree looked like, and it would have been in the parlors where we're standing right now. So a tea setup like this reminds us of another function that might have happened in the parlors at the Rotch Jones Duff House. Mornings would have been reserved for family only, where afternoons would have been for receiving friends. And a tea setup for the Roaches might have been here in the parlors so that they could welcome their guests. Parlors were for tea, they were for visiting friends, they were for Christmas trees. They were generally for all of your family functions and celebrations. So in addition to using the parlors to entertain guests, have tea, have celebrations, it was also a place for the arts. And somebody like Amelia Jones, who was the longest resident of this house, she lived here most of her life. She herself was into theater, she was into music, and she played piano quite well. We have a piano here today that was not actually Amelia Jones' piano, but it's a lovely Steinway with real ivory keys. If you were to come visit it, you would notice the ivory keys. And Amelia would play piano here. She would have guests over to act in her plays, to watch the plays. The other musical person in this household was Beatrice Duff. So that was the family that followed the Joneses, the Jones residents. And Beatrice liked to play piano herself. She also hosted what she called musicals on Thursdays in this house. She had them at other locations, she planned them for other people's houses, but she hosted them right here in the parlors of her own home. So something that's hard to miss in the parlors here, besides the piano, is this painting. And it's by Edward Simmons. It's called The Carpenter's Son. This painting was actually in the house during the Jones residency, which was 1851 to 1935. We have a nice photo of Amelia Jones sitting at her piano with this painting in the background. In the main hallway of the house here, we'll see mostly renovations done by the Duff family. So they were the most recent family to live in the house from 1935 to 1980. And they put in parquet floors, they put in the wallpaper that you see behind me, and they put in a lovely glass chandelier in this main hallway. The wood railing, however, is original to the house from the Roach residence. Remember, that's 1834 to 1850. And if you notice the curve to it, that is something that this house is known for. It's curved wood. You'll see cabinets that are curved, this banister with a nice curve to it. And that's because we were built by shipwrights who were known for their ability to bend wood. So when you come to visit, you should look for these curved spaces in the house. Now, something that we only know from diaries about this banister is that the children that visited during the Jones residence actually used to slide down this banister. And it wasn't even on their backsides as you might think, but actually on their bellies. So it was even a more dangerous undertaking. We also know that the pets of the household would slip through the railings and fall and injure themselves through this railing. So it's beautiful, but potentially dangerous. We don't slide down the railings anymore. On this banister also, or on the stairwell also, was where we have a lovely photo of Betty Duff getting married. This house was known for weddings and large gatherings. The parlors were a place for those events, but also the 1 acre grounds where we have a rose garden and extensive land. So Betty's wedding was held here, and we were told that over 400 guests attended that wedding. If you can imagine 400 guests in this house on this 1 acre property. The Duffs were known to throw very grand parties in this household. Well, we're in the dining room of the Rotch Jones Duff mansion now, and while you might not have a dining room as grand as this, we all do eat, right? That is something we have in common. We all have meals today. We all celebrate with meals. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about how the Roaches, Jones, and Duffs celebrated with meals. This dining room actually used to include an office for Mr. Roach, who made his fortunes off of whaling, and he was the earliest resident of the house. At the time he moved in, there was a wall right about where I'm standing, making his office separate from what was called a tea room. And that wall was removed by the Jones to make a much bigger entertainment space, which is what we have now if you were to visit the mansion now. So the other thing that is remarked about in Jones' time and in the Duff's time is whether the leaves of the table would be in or out. This table is extended so that you could seat up to maybe 10 people easily. But generally speaking, the leaves would be out of the table and the table would be kept small for smaller entertainment and for just the dining of the couple that lived in the house, maybe the couple and their children. So we know that behind me there's a tree. And during the Duff era, which was the most recent residence, again 1935 to 1981, there was a little bit of a battle about where the Christmas tree should be. Mrs. Duff, the woman of the house, Beatrice Duff, always put it in the hallway of the second floor. And sometimes when you visit, you'll see a tree here in the second floor hallway. But her daughter preferred that it be on the first floor. So the records say that when Beatrice was elderly and had actually moved out of the home into a care facility, her daughter put a tree right about here in the first floor of the house in the front window because that's where she always wanted it. So while the dining room is really a mix of all three families, the wallpaper was put in by Beatrice Duff, the furniture is largely Jones, the china on the table is actually a Roach element. So the china that you would see, this red china, was purchased by William Roach's sister, Mary. Now she didn't live in the house, but she ordered it for her own house, and that's what we have here set on the Roach table. The other thing we know about this china that Mary Roach ordered was that it was from Louis André and Company in France, and she specifically requested the most ornate china that they could create. We also know from receipts of purchases for the house that William Roach in his time, again 1834 to 1850, was ordering things for the house like beef, pork, chicken, eggs, nuts, ale, and there are shown on those receipts some larger orders of ale, nuts, and lemons, and we imagine that's probably when they were entertaining and having guests to the house. So we're still in the dining room. And this fireplace might appear kind of off-center if you were to look at the dining room as a whole. And the reason is I'm standing where a wall used to be. That fireplace would have been needed for heat in the smaller office that Mr. Roach had in this house when it was first built. Fireplaces under the Duff residence were decorated somewhat like this. They had greens on the mantle, and they were known to put creches in the fireplaces that weren't being used. So we're now on the second floor of the house in a bedroom set up as a gentleman's bedroom. All the bedrooms that you'd see in the current setup of the mansion are on the second floor. The reason being, you can look out these windows and see a lovely view of the garden, just as the original residents would want to. So this gentleman's bedroom has a rope bed in it, and I just want to show you what a rope bed is. Instead of a traditional box spring, which is something we might have today, there's this interweaving of ropes on a wooden frame. So you can imagine that ropes might give after some time, even a box spring might give. So to restore the springiness of the ropes, you would get out a crank and crank tighter these ropes so that they would become more taut, and therefore the support of the bed would become better over time. So now, when somebody says to you, sleep tight, you can explain that you know the origin of that phrase because it comes from the rope beds that you would tighten with a crank. household as big as this one, you have to assume that these wealthy owners also had help. And under the Jones, we know that at least 5 or 6 members of the help lived here. They actually lived here, were boarded here, and they helped them with cooking, with laundry, basically with every chore, receiving guests. Because how can you throw a party without a cook to make all that food, right? So we know that the Jones had 5 or 6 live-in helpers, and the cooks, there was a bit of turnover in the cooks for some reason. They had Julia, they had Hannah at one point, but these were the people helping them to make those big meals when they did have parties. The Duffs had Bessie. They were not on their own to cook. In fact, Beatrice Duff probably was never in the kitchen to cook a meal for a special event. They always had help. And this area that we have set up in the mansion shows you something else that the help would have done, which would be iron clothing, launder clothing. The laundry itself would have been in the basement of the house, and the maids' quarters would have been up in the attic of the house, which is not currently open to the public. The Duffs were known as a rather formal family, and actually Mr. Duff would show up to dinner. They ate around 6:30, 7 p.m. in a suit jacket. He would come right from work and dinner would be about 6:30, 7. Here in Mrs. Duff's bedroom, we give you a little peek into what a closet might have looked like. And if you're going to have a party of any kind, you need the appropriate clothing, right? So our closet for Beatrice is set up with what she might have worn: hats, gloves, some purses, and a nice array of formal dresses. Here in the children's room at the house, we have it set up with a case of what the children might have played with in their day. And they don't quite look like the toys of today. For one, all these little toy trucks are made of real metal. And the other surprising thing, these dolls are made of porcelain and glass. So from our home to yours, I hope you enjoyed this little tour of the Rotch Jones Duff House and Garden Museum. Happy holidays, and I hope to see you soon.
We hope that this show helped to make your season bright. We'd like to thank the Mayor's Office, Brooke Vinagre, Acting Tourism Director, and Dawn Salerno, Executive Director for the Rotch Jones Duff House. We'd also like to give a special shout out to our videographers who bravely battled the elements to bring you this festive show. Now we'll leave you with our special guest, all the way from the North Pole, reading the classic tale, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas.
It's Santa Claus coming to the boys and girls of New Bedford. We hope that you're doing well and everybody's staying safe and happy this holiday season. I'm sorry I can't come to you in person and see you until Christmas Eve, but I want everybody to stay healthy, want you to wear your masks, and to be really, really good to Mom and Dad so that, you'll be on my good list. But I thought tonight I'd come to you and read you a little poem that was written about me. It was written by somebody named Clement Moore in 1823 and published in a small newspaper in Troy, New York, but it became famous and it was all about me, so I like it. So I wanted to read that for you now. Are you ready? Here we go. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of a new fallen snow gave luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and a tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves before a wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop coursers that flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys was flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprung to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas, boys and girls.